Salamat, Tony. So we'll be proceeding with us with the last presentation by Gerard, by Dr. Barry. You know, dear friends, Dr. Gerard Barry is from the International Rice Research Institute, and no, Dr. Gerard Barry is is the global network coordinator of the Golden Rice Project. But he's not only handling golden rice for Erie, he is also the coordinator for the Harvest Plus project, who is also into micronutrient biofortification of zinc and iron. That is why the focus of the presentation of Gerard would be on other biofortification projects in rice by Erie and its partner organizations. Brad, okay na ba yung presentation? And I'm trying to tell jokes, man. Gerard, you're from Ireland, correct? No, from Ireland, correct? And Gerard is from Ireland, dear friend. So he hails from Ireland, and he has two kids, uh, one wife. And while waiting for the presentation, I also like to introduce an important partner of our project. We call her the Brittany of our project, Jill Cunard here. Jill, would you like to stand up, please, to be acknowledged? She looks like Brittany, no, from Glee. Yeah. So, you know, dear friends, we have a very good project, not only because we have a very good product, but because we have a golden team with us. So, Gerard, please take it away.
Thank you. And I'm supposed to follow that. Okay, I will if my slides come up. Hey, boss. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about a title slightly different to what's in the program. I'm going to talk about healthier rice varieties, which under Erie's mandate in the CGIR system, this is the program I head, and it includes all the work I'm going to talk about today. But it is a nutritionally improved rice for humans, healthier rice for humans, and it deals with both provitamin A, iron, and zinc. Did I do that? Oh, thank you. How do I advance it? Okay, so I need to be patient. All right, okay. So what I want to talk about in this presentation, I want to talk about the need. I want to enhance on what Tony said, and I want to build a case why, and it's not just because we're at Phil Rice or International Rice Research Institute, why it makes sense for the Philippines and for many other Asian countries to work on rice to try and solve public health issues, especially micronutrient deficiencies. And then I'm going to give you some results. So, I'm in charge? Okay. So, I just want to give you a summary of what the human toll of micronutrient deficiencies are. Okay? We talk about iron deficiency, zinc deficiency, and vitamin A deficiency. First of all, you will notice that most of the sufferers from these deficiencies are children and women. Okay? And there's a whole bunch of reasons why, but Tony mentioned higher needs, faster growth rates, etc. But the fact is we're dealing with a problem that is many times children and women. And these are not trivial effects. Many of these situations, if untreated, lead to mortality, either in childhood, childbirth, post-childbirth. These are serious issues. I'll just give you an example of, so vitamin A deficiency, everyone probably started out believing this is related to night blindness and maybe blindness. But no, the breakthrough 20 years ago is that because vitamin A is so important for the immune system, children especially die of measles and cholera needlessly because their diet and their situation is so weakened. So these are very serious situations, which is why a lot of people have committed their lives and their organizations to try and solve them. So let's look at some basic facts here. And I'm working up to why rice here. It takes me a while, okay, but I'll get there. So this is from the National Nutrition Survey conducted by the Food Nutrition Institute under the Department of Science and Technology in 2008 and published in 2010. The Philippines is an amazing resource for looking at public health issues because the government, by law, conducts huge surveys of the health status, nutritional status, the food intake status, and many societal issues for Filipinos every 5 years, and publishes an amazing resource that is the envy of almost every other country in the world. So it allows us to understand the basis for the situation and then try to address it by the most logical means. So this particular is the top 15 foods consumed by children from the age of 6 months to 5 years. The list of foods wouldn't change if I put up adults or the total population. The fact is that 89% of children eat rice every day, and they eat it on average 2.5 times a day, and they eat quite a bit of it. Between 5 and 12, children eat about 296 grams. Now, this is raw. This is as purchased white rice. This is not cooked. Obviously, it's different amounts. And you see the diet. You got sugar, cooking oil, bread, eggs, milk, etc. The first vegetable, I think, is way down here. Okay, so that's enough I'll say about the diet for the moment. So, if you're in the Philippines or parts of Indonesia or parts of Bangladesh or parts of India, and you're largely dependent on rice, you can afford, you can access, you eat, you can produce, or you can acquire locally rice more than any other food. What does that probably mean for your diet? It means that your diet has no vitamin A, no vitamin C, only a small amount of folate, very low levels of iron, and you get some zinc. So if you do not have a diverse diet, and Tony talked about dietary diversification, if you don't have a diverse diet and you're largely based on rice, this is your situation. By the way, I could go to parts of Africa and say with white maize or with cassava or white sweet potato, you'd have exactly the same analysis. In fact, this work by Ricardo E. and his colleagues 12 years ago or so looked at all the other crops, and there's not much difference if you're dependent on a starchy staple such as rice or cassava, etc. So how does this show up in the Filipino diet? And this is one macro view, and I'm going to break it down as I go. So if you look, what the Philippines has, first of all, enormous amounts of data generated every 5 years, but also the government has established recommended energy and nutrition intakes. Some country call it the estimated average requirement. Some might say the recommended daily allowance. But the Philippines uses RENI, and RENI actually is a scientifically determined value. The others are all mathematical. So if you look at the Filipino diet, so 33% get enough energy, pretty good on protein, okay, and the protein quality is actually fairly good. But only 13% get enough iron based on the diet in 2008. You could look in 2003 and 1998. It's pretty much the same situation, unfortunately. Calcium, well, we know this is a problem in the Philippines. Vitamin A sources, and there's either beta-carotene or vitamin A, 20%. And then these are some of the others. Pretty good on niacin. So what I'm highlighting here are iron and calcium, iron and vitamin A, because I will show you later, these are things we can do something about through rice. Okay. Okay. No, what is this? So let me talk about vitamin A deficiency a little bit. I'm going to be repetitive of some of Tony's slides, but I'm going to put them in a different perspective. So Tony showed you some of these interventions we have today. Nutrition education and behavior change. That's great, but it also means people have to be able to afford the food that they want. Home fortification. So instead of relying on industrial fortification, you can supply packets of dense micronutrients that people sprinkle on their own foods. Okay? Large-scale fortification, the Philippines has Republic Act 8976, which mandates fortification of certain foods. And at least the last time I looked, there are about 43 different foods that are fortified with either vitamin A or folate or iron. Now, or iodine. Now, we know that there's some issues about that, but the government has set the will, at least, to deal with some of the problems this way. Promotion of optimal breastfeeding. And I'll come back to what, I mean, that's very, very important. A mother is the best source of a balanced diet of a child through breast milk, regardless. Now, it may not be very good if the mother is anemic, but certainly the child will get enough vitamin A through that diet. And then vitamin A capsule supplementation, and Tony explained that. Now, capsule supplementation is really a Band-Aid. You're addressing the problem, but you're not changing the underlying causes in any way. Because, as Tony said, if you miss the supplement 6 months later, that person is still vitamin A deficient because you haven't changed the diet. So how have... okay, I'll skip this one too. Okay, so how does the world think about the different interventions for dealing with micronutrient deficiencies? And this is a slide produced in 1998 by the Micronutrient Initiative, which is based in Canada. It's a multi-government supported initiative, and it strives to deal with problems that were persistent even back in 1998. So the view would be is that once you identify the problem, you go into a supplementation program. Start dealing with the problem as acutely as possible, immediately as possible. Okay? Over time, you know you need to change the food in the quality of the food. So go with institute food fortification programs where you introduce the missing nutrient, whether it's folate or iodine or iron, into processed foods. Okay? But ultimately, the goal is to improve the overall diet, the basic diet. So where's the Philippines and many other countries today? The Philippines has been supplementation programs for vitamin A deficiency for at least 13 years. And this is government money. This is not aid money. The government commits to buy the supplements. It's been going at this level right across here for 13 years. It hasn't gone through this logical decline based on other interventions. The Food Fortification Act, or Republic Act, very important. But what is the shape of the curve? Probably in the Philippines today, it's down here somewhere. So what Erie and Phil Rice and partners have committed to is, this is where we want to try and make a difference by improving the diet. And since rice is such a huge part of the diet, let's work on improving rice. So let's go back and look at national data again. And this time, this is for vitamin A deficiency based on the diet in 2008. You will see that only 10% of pregnant women are getting enough vitamin A in the diet, if they were just relying on diet. 7.5% of lactating women are getting enough vitamin A in their diet. And you look at the numbers here, the national average is 18%. So based on the diet alone, we cannot rely on the current diet, we cannot rely on solving the problems this way. Let me look now at iron deficiency. Sorry, this is anemia. This is again work from the National Nutrition Survey of 2008. And this is where the FNRI people went out and actually measured blood serum levels of iron. And you look at that, here's what these lines mean. The line is moderate. This line is severe. You can see that except for some men, almost the whole of the Philippine population is between moderate and severe anemia. Now, some of this anemia is caused by infections, and the FNI people are trying to determine how much it is. Generally, about half of anemia is due to infections, the other is based on diet. But this is a very, very serious matter. And let me give you another way to look at it. Okay, I've shown you this part of the slide already. This is vitamin A deficiency inherent based on the diet intakes of Filipinos in 2008. Look at the iron intakes for this based on the same diet. 1.5% of pregnant and lactating women have enough iron in the diet. This is a really serious issue, and this is why people get very excited or committed to things, because this is something we should not tolerate. We should try and fix this. I'm trying to move the slide. Okay. Zinc deficiency. The Philippines is one of the most advanced countries in the world on addressing zinc deficiency at the national level. And this is not a trivial thing to understand. It is very expensive to determine what the level of zinc deficiency is in any country with scientific precision. You can look at short children, and that can largely be zinc deficiency, but it can be other causes as well. But what the Philippine government has begun to do is look at this biochemically, going out and studying the population. And this is the first such report. It's a modest report. It's from selected populations. It was published in 2011. This is the WHO, World Health Organization, funded this work. But it showed that high magnitude of zinc deficiency in the population as a whole. And you look at the numbers, 20 to 30+% for almost any group you look at, okay? Now, I can't show you the slide yet, but in 6 months, yes, where we can look at the Filipino diet and also see, based on the diet, what is the level of inadequacy of intake. This is a collaboration between the Food and Nutrition Research Institute, Harvest Plus, the Ministry of Health of Indonesia, and others, to look at this broadly across Asia. So there's another way for us to understand how to address this issue. So why focus on rice? And I'm just going to be a bit repetitive here. Well, first of all, consumption of rice is so high and so important in the overall diet of Filipinos, but also Bangladeshis, Indians, Indonesians, okay? But here's another slide I want to show you. This is a subset of the anemia numbers I showed earlier. And I've got a little question for you. What's going on here where you've got the most severe levels of anemia? What is going on in the diet of children between 6 months and 1 year? The answer was an earlier slide. I think it's called Lugao. So children are moving from breast milk in an optimal situation onto first foods. And unless you can afford expensive baby powders, your children are probably going on to rice gruel. Another reason why, if we want to bring this number down, let's make sure that rice gruel is really important and improve dietary content. So again, I'm just belaboring the point here, but if we want to work through rice for many Asian countries, it makes a lot of sense the way rice is incorporated into the general diet, the specific diet, etc. So I'm speaking now just from Erie. So as part of our overall programs, we've committed to high iron rice, high zinc rice, high beta carotene rice, and this is the golden rice that Tony talked to you about. And we're working on in various levels in the Philippines, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and India across these targets. So for rice, the level of iron is extremely low. This is 5 to 10 times lower than most food tables assume. And I won't go into that, but the Asian Development Bank up the road there sponsored a program all across Asia until 2002, where one of the things we found out was that rice is a worse source of iron than anyone imagined. So our challenges are even bigger. So with Harvest Plus, we've set a target of getting to 12 to 14 parts per million, so a 6 to 7-fold increase in content. And this, based on most diets, would add 30% more of the estimated average requirement just through one food change. High zinc, the current level is 16, the target is 24, and that would increase by 40% the average requirement. For golden rice, we're starting at beta carotene level at 0. Our target is 6 to 8, and that would add to about 50% of the estimated average requirement. And we've got much better numbers now, but I won't go into those here. So let's talk about what we're doing for iron. And oh, by the way, it's zinc as well, although we started out trying to do this for iron. So Erie and partners around the world, including the Philippines and Brazil and elsewhere, have been trying for years to find a high iron rice. It really doesn't exist out there. We can find things that are 4 or 5, nothing that approaches the 12, 13, or 14 we need to get to. So as Tony gave the rationale, just because we know how to add genes, we don't do it if we can do it by breeding. In the case of high iron, we cannot get a high iron approach by breeding. So what we look at is what we know. So ferritin, that's found in plants and animals. And ferritin is a protein that can accumulate 5,000 atoms of iron within a single molecule of ferritin. And that's very important. Number one, you store a lot, but also you can't have iron wandering around the cell in a plant. It actually makes the plant very sick. So you need to stick it to something or stick it in something. In this case, ferritin will trap the iron if you can increase the level. We also know that iron from soybean ferritin, which is our preferential gene we use for this, is highly bioavailable. Bo Lauderdale at UCLA years ago purified soybean ferritin, did a human trial and showed it was as bioavailable as iron sulfate, which is the standard highest bioavailable form of iron in the diet. We also have work from China that we're going to follow up with Cornell. Is that sorry, wrong slide. Sorry. So the approach here, is to take the soybean ferritin gene and now express it in the rice grain so that it causes a sink effect and it draws iron into the grain, and it works. Okay. And we've known this from work done in Japan about 10 years ago, and I'll show you how Erie's expanded on that. The other approach we're doing is we need to move the iron out of the plant into the grain. There's 100 times more iron in a plant leaf than there is in the rice grain. It's all sitting there in the plant. But the plant, to sort of like personalize it a bit, the plant doesn't know it's supposed to put iron in the grain at the level we want, okay? So we have to get it moving. So we have the ferritin gene sitting there ready to take the iron. If we get it there, we need to move the iron there. So the approach we use is a compound called nicotianamine, which is found in every plant. It's found in soybeans and it's found in rice and every food we eat. And it is part of a number of chemicals that bind metals like iron and zinc, etc., and move them around the plant. So what my colleague Inez Lodin has done is we express a gene called nicotianamine synthase. It makes nicotianamine. We increase the level, and it starts moving the iron around the plant. And because we have a bigger sink, the iron gets trapped in the grain. Okay. But the other really interesting we're going to follow up is that there's one report that nicotianamine itself, just by increasing the amount of that in the rice grain, the amount of iron that's taken up by human cells is improved. So we need to verify that, so we've got a big collaboration with Cornell University on that. So where are we on this project? We've been doing this for quite a number of years, and starting last year and continuing for a number of years, we've got a series of 5 confined field trials of the leading materials, both in the Philippines and in Colombia, looking at how transgenic rice plants with the soybean ferritin gene or the rice nicotianamine synthase gene in it. And so far what we have is the materials from this field trial. We're at 12 to 13 parts per million iron. The target is 14. I don't think anyone will reject us if we only get 13. And well, we weren't looking for zinc. We actually got quite an increase in zinc as well. So we're very excited about these materials. We're going to field test them next couple of years. I think we've been smart by getting a gene from soybean that billions of people probably consume every day, a gene from rice that billions of people consume every day. Baby this Dr. Maybe didn't mention it, but the DOST has a very rigorous process before anyone even starts any biotech work in this country, and you have to show that your gene is not an allergen before you start the work. So long before we started this work, we satisfied the DOST Biosafety Committee that these weren't allergens. So we like the fact that the genes come from food sources, and we hope to continue this work the next year or so. So I'm going to thank you very much. I hope I've convinced you that it makes sense to improve the nutritional value of rice for Filipinos and other societies. Tony mentioned this, more information on golden rice, and then Harvest Plus for the work on iron and zinc. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Gerard. Can we call on Tony and Gerard at the head table for your questions? So
Thank you for this.
You look Filipino, Gerard, with that. So we're now opening the floor for your questions or comments. Who would like to ask the first question? I would like to acknowledge the presence of the First Lady of BPI, Ms. Alma Soriano. The first question.